My son told me it was only for a week. That was what Ryan said as he carried my overnight bag into the nursing home like he was doing something kind. My daughter-in-law Brittany stood behind him with her hands folded and her face arranged into that careful little smile people wear when they do not want to look cruel. But the woman at the front desk greeted me by name, handed over a folder already prepared, and said, "Your room is all set, Mrs. Hayes. All set." That was the moment I knew this had not been decided today. Whatever my son was calling temporary, he had planned it long before I ever walked through that door. If this opening stirred something in you, let me know in the comments how you would have felt in my place. And before we go further, please like and subscribe if you enjoy emotional family stories like this one. I'd also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. My name is Stella Hayes. I'm 68 years old, and until a week ago, I believed I had lived a careful life, one built on quiet routines, hard-earned stability, and the kind of love that doesn't need to be spoken every day to be real. I've lived in the same house in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio for 32 years. My husband Harold and I bought it when Ryan was just 10. Back then, the paint was chipped, the kitchen outdated, and the backyard more dirt than grass. But Harold had this way of seeing what things could become instead of what they were. Over time, we fixed it up together, one room at a time, one paycheck at a time, until it became something solid, something ours. After Harold passed 5 years ago, that house became more than just a place to live. It was the last space where his voice still echoed in the walls, the last place where I could sit at the kitchen table and almost imagine him across from me reading the morning paper with that quiet hum he always made when he was thinking. I didn't need much after that. I kept things simple. I cooked for one. I watered my small garden. I went to church on Sundays, and sometimes I'd have lunch with a neighbor or two. It wasn't a big life, but it was mine, and I was still perfectly capable of living it. Ryan. My son lives about 20 minutes away. He's 42 now, tall like his father, with that same confident way of speaking that makes people listen. He works in real estate, has for years, and he's good at it. Or at least he always seemed to be. He knows how to present things, how to make people feel comfortable, how to guide a conversation without ever making it feel forced. For most of his adult life, we had what I thought was a steady relationship. Not overly close, not distant either. He called every few days, stopped by once a week, helped me with things around the house when I needed it. After Harold died, he was the one who handled a lot of the paperwork, the insurance calls, the bank visits. I was grateful for that. I trusted him. Maybe that's why I didn't question things as early as I should have. Looking back now, I can see the shift. It didn't happen all at once. It came in small, almost invisible steps. At first, Ryan started asking more questions about my health. "Mom, have you been forgetting things lately?" he asked one afternoon while standing in my kitchen leaning casually against the counter. I remember laughing it off. "Only where I put my glasses," I said. "And I think that's been happening since I was 40. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Still, it's something we should keep an eye on." After that, he began noticing things I hadn't noticed myself. "You left the stove on too long the other day. You told me the same story twice. You seemed a little unsteady when you got up." Each time I explained. The stove had been on low. The story had been something I was excited about. The unsteady step had been because my knee sometimes stiffened in the mornings. Normal things. Ordinary things. But Ryan didn't argue. He just nodded slowly like he was filing something away. "Brittany." My daughter-in-law was subtler. She never directly said anything was wrong with me. Instead, she phrased everything like a suggestion. It might be safer if someone checked in on you more often. "Have you thought about simplifying things a bit? Maintaining a house that size alone must be exhausting. She always said it gently, kindly even. But there was something in her tone that made me feel evaluated, as if I were being assessed without my permission. I told myself I was imagining it. After all, they were family. Things escalated slowly from there. Ryan started offering to help organize my paperwork. Just in case, he said. If anything ever happens, it'll be easier if everything's in one place. He asked where I kept the deed to the house. He asked about my bank accounts, nothing invasive, just general questions or so it seemed. He offered to keep a spare set of keys. I gave them to him without hesitation. Why wouldn't I? He was my son. Then came the conversations about the house itself. Mom, you don't need all this space anymore, Ryan said one evening while we sat in the living room. It's a lot to maintain. I manage just fine, I replied. I know, but think about the future. What if something happens? Wouldn't it be better to move somewhere smaller? Closer to us. Brittany chimed in softly from the armchair. There are some really lovely communities, comfortable, safe, low maintenance. I remember feeling a flicker of irritation then. Not anger, just a quiet resistance. I'm not ready to leave this house, I said firmly. This is my home. Ryan didn't push. Not then. He just nodded again, that same thoughtful expression crossing his face. Of course, he said. We just want what's best for you. At the time, I believed him. But now, sitting in that nursing home bed, staring at the unfamiliar walls and the neatly folded blankets at the foot, I replay those conversations in my mind with a different understanding. Because it wasn't just the questions. It was the timing. Just 2 days before Ryan brought me here, I walked into the kitchen and found a folder lying open on the table. It wasn't something I recognized immediately, but my name was printed clearly across the top. Stella Hayes. Property Overview. I remember pausing, my hand resting on the back of a chair. Inside the folder were pages, printed listings, market comparisons, estimated values. I didn't read everything, but I saw enough to understand what it was. Information about my house. Detailed information. More than anyone would casually gather. Ryan walked in a moment later. He froze when he saw me standing there. Oh, he said quickly, stepping forward to close the folder. That's just work stuff. Work stuff with my name on it, I asked. He smiled a little too quickly. Just using it as an example. You know, to show a client how pricing works. I remember looking at him for a long second. Something in me wanted to press further to ask more questions, but I didn't. I let it go. That was the moment I should have listened to my instincts, because 2 days later he told me about the mold problem. Mom, we found some moisture damage in the attic, he explained over the phone. It's not safe for you to stay there while they fix it. How long will it take? I asked. About a week. Maybe a little less. And where am I supposed to go? I've already arranged something temporary, he said smoothly. Just for a few days. You'll be comfortable. It's a nice place. A nice place. That's what he called it. And I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Now, as I sit here in this room that doesn't belong to me, with a schedule I didn't choose, and people who think they understand my condition better than I do, I can't stop thinking about that folder on the kitchen table, about the way Ryan closed it too quickly, about the way Brittany avoided looking at me that day, about all the small moments I dismissed because it was easier than questioning my own son. I don't know exactly what Ryan is doing while I'm here, but I know one thing for certain. Whatever it is, it needed me to be gone. The morning Ryan came to take me somewhere temporary started like any other. I woke up early, made myself a cup of coffee, and stood by the kitchen window watching the light come up over the backyard. It was a quiet, familiar moment, the kind I had come to rely on since Harold passed, the kind that made me feel steady. There was no sign in that soft golden light that anything was about to change. Ryan arrived just after 9. He didn't call ahead like he usually did. Instead, I heard the car door slam, then his footsteps coming quickly up the front porch. When he walked in, he looked different. Not upset, not angry, just focused. As if he had already made up his mind about something and didn't want to linger long enough for anyone to question it. "Morning, Mom," he said too brightly. "Good morning," I replied, setting my mug down. "You're early," he nodded, glancing around the house in a way that made me uneasy. Not admiring, not relaxed, more like he was checking something. "Yeah, I wanted to get a head start. The guys are coming in later to deal with the attic." "The attic?" I asked. "The mold situation I told you about," he said quickly. "It's worse than we thought." I frowned slightly. "You said it was minor." "Well, it turns out it's not," he said, already moving toward the hallway. "It's not safe for you to stay here while they're working on it." I watched him walk past me, his steps purposeful, his movements efficient. He didn't pause to sit down or ask if I wanted breakfast together like he usually would. Instead, he went straight into my bedroom. A few seconds later, I heard drawers opening. "Ryan," I called, following him. He was already pulling clothes out of my dresser and placing them neatly into a small overnight bag. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice tightening. "Packing some things for you," he replied without looking up. "Just the essentials. You won't need much." For where I pressed, he paused for a fraction of a second, then resumed folding. "I told you, Mom. I found a place for you to stay for a few days, just until everything here is taken care of." "A hotel?" I asked. He gave a short, almost dismissive shake of his head. "Not exactly. It's better than a hotel. More comfortable." Something about the way he said that made my chest tighten. "I don't understand," I said slowly. "Why can't I just stay with you?" That finally made him stop. He straightened up, holding one of my sweaters in his hands, and for a moment he looked at me. "Really? Looked at me? It's not a good time, Mom," he said carefully. "We've got a lot going on. Brittany's schedule is packed and the house is a mess right now." A mess. I had been to their house just a week earlier. It had been spotless. "I wouldn't be in the way," I said quietly. I know he replied quickly. "That's not what I'm saying. I just think this is easier. For everyone. Easier." That word stayed with me. Still, I didn't argue further. Not because I agreed, but because I couldn't quite put my finger on what felt wrong. And without that, I didn't know how to push back without sounding ungrateful. So I stood there and watched my son pack my things like he was preparing me for a short trip I hadn't agreed to. He chose practical clothes. A few blouses, comfortable pants, my cardigan. He added my medications without asking, slipping them into a side pocket. At one point, he picked up a framed photograph from my nightstand, one of Harold and me taken years ago, and hesitated. Then he set it back down. "You won't need that," he said lightly. I didn't respond. When he finished, he zipped up the bag and carried it to the front door. "Ready?" he asked. I looked around my bedroom. The bed neatly made, the curtains drawn just enough to let in the morning light, the familiar scent of lavender from the drawer sachets. It didn't feel like I was leaving for a few days. It felt like I was stepping away from something I might not come back to the same way. "I suppose so," I said. The drive was quiet. Ryan turned on the radio, but the volume was low, and neither of us paid much attention to it. I sat in the passenger seat, my hands folded in my lap, watching the streets I knew so well pass by. We didn't take the route toward his house. We didn't head toward any hotel district either. Instead, he drove farther than I expected, past familiar neighborhoods, past the shopping center, toward a part of town I rarely visited. "Ryan," I said, finally, keeping my voice calm. "Where exactly are we going?" He kept his eyes on the road. "It's just a facility nearby. Really nice. Clean, professional. You'll be comfortable there." "Facility." The word landed heavily between us. "What kind of facility?" I asked. He hesitated just long enough for my heart to start beating faster. "It's a short-term care place," he said. "They have everything you need. Meal staff, medical supervision just in case." I turned my head slowly to look at him. "Medical supervision," I repeated. "It's just a precaution," he said quickly. "You've had a few moments lately, Mom. We talked about this." "No," I said firmly. "You talked about it. I told you I was fine." He exhaled as if he'd been expecting resistance but hoped it wouldn't come. "Look, it's only for a week," he said. "Let's not make this a bigger deal than it needs to be." "A bigger deal?" I looked back out the window, but the scenery no longer felt familiar. Every mile we drove seemed to carry me further away from something I couldn't quite name. When we finally pulled into the parking lot, my stomach dropped. The building was large, modern, and well-maintained. There were flower beds near the entrance, and the sign out front had a warm, welcoming name in soft blue letters. But there was no mistaking what it was. It was a nursing home. I didn't speak as Ryan parked the car. I didn't move when he turned off the engine. "Mom," he said gently, reaching over to touch my arm. I pulled back slightly. "You're putting me in a nursing home," I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's not like that," he said quickly. "It's just temporary. Plenty of people stay here short term." "For what?" I demanded softly. "I'm not sick. I'm not injured." "I don't need this. It's just for safety," he insisted, "while the house is being worked on." I stared at him, searching his face for something, anything that would make this make sense. But all I saw was determination, not cruelty, not hesitation, just a firm decision that had already been made. He got out of the car and came around to open my door. I stepped out slowly, my legs feeling unsteady not from weakness but from the weight of what was happening. Inside, everything was bright and clean. Too clean. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and something floral meant to cover it. A receptionist looked up and smiled warmly. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, as if she had been expecting me. "We've been preparing for your arrival, preparing." She handed Ryan a clipboard. He signed a few papers quickly, barely glancing at them. I tried to look to understand what he was agreeing to on my behalf, but the forms were turned away from me. "Here we are," the receptionist continued, handing over a folder. "We have your medical notes, your medications, and the care plan your son discussed with us." "Care plan." I felt something inside me go still. "I didn't discuss any care plan," I said quietly. The receptionist's smile faltered just slightly, then returned. "Your son provided everything we needed," she said. "Of course he did." A nurse came to guide me down the hallway. Ryan picked up my bag and followed. We walked past rooms with half-open doors, glimpses of other lives unfolding quietly inside. A television murmuring, a wheelchair by a window, a pair of slippers neatly placed beside a bed. Each step felt heavier than the last. When we reached my room, the nurse opened the door and gestured inside. "It's all set for you, Mrs. Hayes. All set." I stood in the doorway, unable to move. Behind me, Ryan set my bag down gently. "I'll come by in a few days," he said. "Just get settled, okay?" I turned to look at him. For a week, I said. He nodded. For a week, he repeated. Then he left. And just like that, my son walked out of the room, down the hallway, and out of the building, leaving me in a place I had never agreed to be, surrounded by people who believed I needed to be there. As the door closed softly behind him, I realized something I couldn't ignore anymore. Ryan hadn't just brought me here because it was convenient. He had made sure I would be accepted. He had given them information. He had signed things. He had arranged everything in advance. And whatever he was doing out there in the world, it required me to be here. The first night in that room felt longer than any night I could remember. It wasn't the bed, it was clean, firm, perfectly adequate. It wasn't even the quiet, though it was a different kind of quiet than my house. This quiet wasn't filled with familiar sounds like the ticking of my kitchen clock or the soft hum of the refrigerator. It was a managed quiet, broken only by distant footsteps, the occasional rolling cart and voices that never quite rose above a certain volume. It was the feeling that I had been placed somewhere without my consent and that no one around me found that strange. I lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling, replaying everything Ryan had said and everything he hadn't said. For safety. Just a week. Don't make this a bigger deal than it needs to be. The words circled in my mind like they were trying to convince me of something. But the more I thought about them, the less they made sense. Because if this was truly about safety, why hadn't he taken me to his home? If this was about temporary inconvenience, why had everything been arranged in advance? And if this was about care, why did I feel so utterly dismissed? Sometime in the early morning, exhaustion finally pulled me into a shallow sleep. When I woke up, it was to the soft knock of someone entering the room. "Good morning, Mrs. Hayes," a cheerful voice said. I turned my head and saw a young woman standing by the door, her uniform crisp, her smile practiced but not unkind. "I'm Tasha. I'll be helping you get settled today." I pushed myself up slowly. "Good morning." She moved around the room with quiet efficiency, opening curtains, checking a chart, adjusting something on the wall. "How did you sleep?" she asked. "Not very well," I admitted. "That's normal the first night," she said gently. "It takes a little time to adjust." "Adjust." I nodded, though the word didn't sit well with me. "I won't be here long," I said. "Just a few days." Tasha paused for a fraction of a second before continuing what she was doing. "That's what your file says," she replied carefully. There was something in her tone, not disbelief exactly, but caution. "What else does it say?" I asked. She hesitated this time. "Just standard information," she said. "Medical notes, medications, some observations." "Observations," I repeated. She glanced at me, then back at the chart. Things like memory, mobility, general condition. I studied her face. She didn't look uncomfortable, but she wasn't entirely at ease either. "And what do those observations say about me?" I asked quietly. Tasha didn't answer immediately. Instead, she closed the chart and set it aside. "Why don't we get you some breakfast first?" she suggested. "We can talk more later." It was a gentle deflection, and I recognized it for what it was, but I let it go for the moment. The dining room was larger than I expected, filled with small tables and soft conversations. Some residents ate quietly, others spoke to each other or to staff members who moved between tables with practiced ease. I felt out of place immediately, not because of the people, but because of the assumption. Everyone there was being cared for, watched, managed, and I didn't belong in that category. As I stood uncertainly near the entrance, a voice called out, "You look like someone who hasn't decided whether to sit or run." I turned and saw an older woman sitting at a table near the window. Her gray hair was pulled back neatly and her eyes were sharp, too sharp for someone who was supposed to be fading into the background of a place like this. "I'm considering my options," I said dryly. She smiled. "Sit. Running won't get you far with those shoes." I glanced down at my sensible flats, then back at her. "Fair point," I admitted and walked over. "I'm June," she said, extending a hand. "Stella." She nodded, studying me in a way that felt more like observation than curiosity. "First day?" she asked. "Second," I said. "But it feels like the first." "That's because you haven't accepted it yet," she replied simply. "I'm not planning to," I said. June's lips curved slightly. "Good." That caught my attention. "Good," I echoed. "Most people here either accept things too quickly or fight in ways that don't help them," she said. "You seem like you're still thinking." "I don't belong here," I said more firmly now. June didn't argue. Instead, she leaned back in her chair and asked, "Who brought you my son?" "And what reason did he give mold in the attic?" I said. "Said it wasn't safe for me to stay at home while they fixed it." June raised an eyebrow. "Mold," she repeated. "That's what he said." "And you believed him?" I hesitated. At the time, I admitted. June nodded slowly as if that confirmed something for her. "They always give reasons that sound reasonable," she said. "That's how they get you through the door." A chill ran through me. "What do you mean, they?" I asked. She shrugged lightly. "Family? Caregivers? Anyone who needs you to cooperate." I studied her carefully. "Are you saying people get brought here under false pretenses?" I asked. "I'm saying," June replied calmly, "that sometimes the truth is simplified." I sat back absorbing that. Across the room, Tasha moved between tables, helping another resident with her tray. She glanced in our direction briefly, her expression unreadable. "My son wouldn't lie to me," I said, though the words felt less certain than I wanted them to. June didn't challenge me directly. "Maybe not outright," she said, "but people have a way of telling the version of the truth that works best for them." That stayed with me. After breakfast, I tried calling Ryan. It went straight to voicemail. I waited an hour and tried again. Voicemail. I sent a message, "Call me when you can." No response. I tried Brittany next. She answered on the third ring. "Hi, Stella." She said, her tone polite but distant. "Everything okay? I wanted to check on the house I said. How long is the work expected to take?" "Oh, they're still assessing things," she replied quickly. "It might take the full week like Ryan said. Which company is doing the work?" I asked. There was a pause just a second too long. "I'd have to ask Ryan," she said. "He's handling all that." "I see." "We'll keep you updated," she added. "Just focus on resting." "Okay, resting?" "Of course," I said and ended the call. By the afternoon, the unease that had settled in my chest the night before had sharpened into something more defined. This wasn't just discomfort, it was suspicion. I found Tasha later in the hallway checking supplies on a cart. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Of course," she replied, turning toward me. "What does my file say about my memory?" I asked directly. She hesitated, then lowered her voice slightly. "It mentions mild cognitive concerns," she said carefully. I felt my stomach drop, based on what I asked. "Observations reported by your family," she said. "My family," I repeated. Tasha nodded. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. "And based on your own observations?" I asked. She met my eyes, then really met them. "You seem very clear to me," she said quietly. Relief and anger surged together in my chest. "Then why am I being treated like I'm not?" I asked. Because Tasha said gently in situations like this, family reports carry a lot of weight. I looked down the hallway at the closed doors, the quiet rooms, the controlled environment. And for the first time since I arrived, a thought formed with frightening clarity. What if this wasn't just about keeping me safe? What if Ryan needed me to be seen as someone who couldn't speak for herself? I swallowed hard, because if that were true, then this week wasn't just a temporary inconvenience. It was a window. And whatever my son was doing outside these walls, he needed me to stay inside them. By the third day, the rhythm of the place began to settle around me like a routine I had never agreed to, but could no longer ignore. Breakfast at 8, medications at 9, quiet activities before lunch, visits if there were any in the afternoon, dinner early, lights dimmed by 9:30. Everything moved with a quiet efficiency that made it easy to forget time, easy to forget yourself. I refused to let that happen. I kept track of the days. I kept my mind active. I replayed conversations, analyzed details, held on to every piece of clarity I had, like it was proof of something I might soon need to defend. Because the more I thought about it, the more something didn't add up. Ryan had said the house needed repairs, but repairs didn't require silence. Repairs didn't explain the way Brittany had avoided answering simple questions. And repairs certainly didn't explain the man who had answered my home phone. That moment came back to me again and again, the pause before he hung up, like he hadn't expected to hear my voice. Like he knew he shouldn't have been there. I found June in the common room that afternoon, sitting near a window with a book open in her lap. She wasn't reading it. She was watching people. She always seemed to be watching. "You look like you've been solving a puzzle," she said as I approached. "I think I've been ignoring one," I replied, taking a seat across from her. "That's more honest," she said with a faint smile. I leaned forward slightly. "Have you ever heard of someone being brought here so something could be done at their house?" I asked. June didn't answer right away. She closed her book carefully and set it aside. "Why do you ask?" she said. "Because I called my home," I said, and someone else answered. Her expression didn't change much, but her eyes sharpened. "Did your son mention anyone being there?" she asked. "No," I said. And when I asked about the repairs, my daughter-in-law couldn't even tell me which company was doing them. June let out a slow breath. "That's not a good sign," she said. I felt a chill move through me. "What do you think is happening?" I asked. She tilted her head slightly. "I think," she said carefully, "that you need to start considering possibilities you don't want to consider." I sat back, my hands tightening in my lap. "You mean—" "He's lying," I said quietly. "I mean," June replied, "that people don't go to this much trouble for something simple." I thought about the folder on the kitchen table, the one with my name on it, the one Ryan had closed too quickly. "He's in real estate," I said slowly. "That's his job." June didn't speak, but she didn't need to, because the thought had already begun to form on its own. He knows how to sell houses. He knows how to prepare them. He knows how to present them. And for the first time, I allowed myself to follow that thought all the way to its conclusion. My breath caught. "No," I whispered, more to myself than to her. June watched me closely. What she asked. "He wouldn't," I said. "He wouldn't do that." "What exactly are you thinking he wouldn't do?" she asked gently. I shook my head, my heart starting to race. "Sell my house?" I said the words, feeling heavy and unreal. June didn't react with shock. That frightened me more than if she had. "Do you know for certain that he hasn't?" she asked. "I haven't signed anything," I said quickly. "He can't sell it without me." "That depends," she said. On what? On whether he's trying to prove you can't make decisions for yourself. The room seemed to tilt slightly. That's not possible, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. I'm perfectly capable. I believe that, June said. But what matters is what's written down, what's been reported, what others believe. I thought about the file Tasha had mentioned, the memory concerns, the observations. My own son told them I wasn't well, I said slowly. June nodded. And once that idea is in place, she said it becomes easier for other decisions to be made on your behalf. I pressed my hands against my temples. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. And yet, piece by piece, it was starting to make sense. The questions about my accounts, the interest in my paperwork, the push to simplify my life, the folder, the sudden urgency, the arranged stay, the silence, the stranger in my house. All of it. Every single piece. It wasn't random. It was a sequence. A plan. I need to call him, I said suddenly, standing up. June didn't stop me. Be careful what you say, she warned quietly. If he thinks you're catching on, he might move faster. Move faster. The words echoed in my head as I walked back to my room. My hands were trembling as I picked up the phone. I dialed Ryan's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice unusually quick. "Everything okay?" I swallowed hard. "I wanted to check on the house," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "How are the repairs going?" There was a brief pause. "Fine," he said. "They're making progress." "Which company did you hire?" I asked. Another pause. "Just a local crew," he said. "Don't worry about the details." "I'd like to know the details," I said, a little firmer this time. "Mom," he said, his tone tightening slightly. "You don't need to stress about this. That's why I'm handling it." Handling it. I took a slow breath. Did someone answer the phone at the house yesterday? I asked. Silence, just for a moment. But it was enough. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe one of the workers." One of the workers answered my phone and hung up without saying anything I pressed. "Maybe they didn't realize who it was," he said quickly. "Look, I'm in the middle of something right now. Can we talk later?" "No," I said, surprising even myself. "We can talk now." There was another pause. Longer this time. "Mom," he said carefully, "you need to focus on resting. That's why you're there." I closed my eyes. "I'm there because you put me there," I said quietly. "And I did that because it's the safest option," he replied, his voice firm now. "For who?" I asked. The question hung between us. He didn't answer. "I'll come see you in a few days," he said instead. "We'll talk then." Then the line went dead. I stood there for a long moment, the phone still in my hand. My heart was pounding. Not from confusion anymore, not from uncertainty, but from something far more dangerous. Clarity. Because for the first time, Ryan hadn't sounded like a son trying to reassure his mother. He had sounded like someone trying to control a situation. Someone who didn't want too many questions. Someone who needed time. I set the phone down slowly. Across the room, the neatly folded blankets, the quiet walls, the structured environment, it all felt different now. Not like a place of care, but like a place designed to keep me out of the way. I walked back to the window and stared out at the parking lot, at the world beyond it, and I realized something that made my stomach twist. If Ryan really was trying to sell my house, if he really was using this week to set everything in motion, then I wasn't just here by accident. I was here because I was the one obstacle he couldn't move, unless I stayed exactly where I was. By the fourth day, fear had sharpened into something far more dangerous: determination. I woke up earlier than usual long before breakfast and sat upright in bed staring at the thin strip of morning light creeping under the curtains. For the first time since arriving, I didn't feel lost. I felt cornered. And there's a difference. A lost person waits to be found. A cornered person starts looking for a way out. I dressed quickly and made my way into the hallway before the usual morning activity began. The building felt quieter at that hour, less controlled, less supervised. It was the closest thing I had to privacy. I found the administrative office down the corridor, the door slightly ajar. Inside, a middle-aged man sat behind a desk reviewing paperwork. He looked up as I knocked lightly. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, polite but reserved. "Is everything all right?" "I need to speak with you," I said, stepping inside. "Of course. Please have a seat." I didn't sit. "I'd like to leave," I said. The words hung in the air, simple and direct. He folded his hands on the desk. "Your stay here was arranged by your son," he replied. "We typically coordinate discharge through the designated family contact. I am perfectly capable of deciding where I stay," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I did not agree to be here, and I would like to go home." His expression shifted slightly, not dismissive, but cautious. "I understand your concern," he said, "but your file indicates some cognitive concerns that require oversight." "My file is wrong," I said firmly. He gave a small professional nod. "That may be something we can reassess," he said, "but until then we have to follow protocol." Protocol. A word that felt heavier than it should. "What does that mean exactly?" I asked. "It means we need confirmation from your family or a formal evaluation before making changes to your care plan," he explained. Care plan. I felt a wave of anger rise in my chest. "I don't need a care plan," I said. "I need my autonomy." He didn't respond to that. Instead, he reached for a folder, my folder, and opened it. "These notes were provided upon your admission," he said. "They indicate episodes of forgetfulness, instability, and difficulty managing daily tasks." "That's not true," I said. "They were reported by your son," he replied calmly. There it was again, that quiet, devastating reality. My voice versus his. And in this place, his carried more weight. I left the office without another word, because arguing wasn't going to get me anywhere. Not like this. I needed something else, something stronger than insistence. I found Tasha in the supply room later that morning restocking medications. She glanced up when I entered, her expression softening slightly. "You're up early," she said. "I need your help," I said. She paused, sensing the seriousness in my tone. "What's going on?" she asked. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "They won't let me leave," I said. "Not without my son's approval or some kind of evaluation." Tasha nodded slowly. "That's usually how it works. But you've seen me," I pressed. "You know I'm not confused. You know I'm not incapable." Her eyes flickered with something agreement, maybe, or hesitation. "I think you're very clear," she said carefully. "Then you need to say that I replied. To someone who can make a difference." She looked down at the tray in her hands. "It's not that simple," she said. "Why not?" "Because I'm not the one who determines capacity," she explained. "And even if I speak up, it might not override what's already been documented." "So what does I asked?" She hesitated again, then leaned in slightly. "A formal cognitive evaluation," she said quietly. "Independent. Documented. If that shows you're capable, it changes everything." My heart lifted slightly. "Then I want one," I said immediately. You can request it, she replied, but it has to go through administration. Then I'll request it, I said. Tasha nodded, but her expression remained cautious. There's something else, she added. Even if you get the evaluation, you might still run into resistance. From who, I asked. She didn't need to answer. I already knew. Ryan, because if he was doing what I thought he was doing, if he was trying to move forward with something that required me to be seen as incapable, then proof of my clarity wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous to him. I left Tasha and went straight back to the administrative office. This time I sat down. I'd like to request a formal cognitive evaluation, I said. The man behind the desk looked up surprised but not resistant. That can be arranged, he said. It may take a day or two. I'll wait, I said. He nodded, making a note. As I walked out, I felt a small but significant shift inside me. For the first time since arriving, I had done something that moved me forward. Not just emotionally, practically. But it wasn't enough. Because even if I proved I was capable, that wouldn't stop whatever Ryan was already doing. I needed information. I needed proof. And I needed it before it was too late. That afternoon, I found June again. She was in the same spot by the window as if she had never left. I spoke to administration, I said, sitting down across from her. They won't let me go without an evaluation. That's expected, she said. I've requested one. Good. I leaned forward. But that's not going to stop him, I said. If he's already doing something with my house, then you need to find out exactly what June finished. I nodded. How I asked. June was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You need someone on the outside. I don't have anyone, I said. Not that I trust right now. She studied me carefully. Then you wait for someone who might listen? She said. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? There are visitors, she said. Family, friends, sometimes professionals. Not everyone who walks in here is part of the system. I didn't fully understand what she was implying, but something in her tone made me pay attention. There's someone coming tomorrow, she added, to see me. I looked at her, and I asked. And she used to be a lawyer, June said. Worked with cases involving elder care, financial disputes, things like that. My pulse quickened. You think she could help me? I asked. I think June said slowly that if what you're saying is true, she'll recognize it. I sat back, my mind racing. A lawyer? Someone who understood how these situations worked. Someone who might see through the story Ryan had created. Hope flickered inside me, small, fragile, but real. What's her name? I asked. June smiled faintly. Claire Whitmore, she said. The name meant nothing to me, but the possibility it carried meant everything. That night I didn't lie awake staring at the ceiling. I lay there thinking, planning, replaying every detail, every conversation, every inconsistency, because tomorrow, for the first time since this began, I might finally speak to someone who wouldn't just listen, but understand. And if that happened, if someone outside this place saw what I was starting to see, then maybe, just maybe, this week wouldn't end the way my son intended. I barely touched my breakfast the next morning. The tray sat in front of me, scrambled eggs, toast, a small cup of fruit, but I kept pushing the fork around the plate without taking a bite. My attention wasn't on the food. It was on the clock mounted high on the wall. June had said her visitor usually arrived mid-morning. Every minute that passed felt heavier than the last. You're going to wear a hole in that plate if you keep doing that, June said dryly from across the table. I looked up, forcing a faint smile. I didn't realize I was that obvious. You are, she replied. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It means you still care about what happens next. I do, I said quietly. More than I thought I would. June studied me for a moment, then nodded toward the hallway. She should be here soon. My heart gave a small, sharp thud. What if she doesn't believe me? I asked before I could stop myself. June didn't hesitate. Then you try again with someone else, she said. But I don't think that will be the problem. Why not? Because what you're describing isn't subtle, she replied. It's just hidden behind the right words. That stayed with me. Hidden behind the right words. Concern, safety, temporary. Words that sounded kind on the surface but could carry something else underneath. We hadn't been sitting there much longer when I saw her. She walked into the dining room without hesitation, scanning the space with a kind of quiet awareness that immediately set her apart. She was in her early 60s, I guessed, dressed simply but sharply dark slacks, a tailored blouse, a structured bag over her shoulder. Her posture was straight, her movements deliberate. She didn't look like someone visiting out of obligation. She looked like someone who paid attention. That's her, June said softly. My pulse quickened. Claire Whitmore. She approached our table with a small, genuine smile. June, she said warmly, leaning in to hug her. You look well. Still alive? June replied with a hint of humor, which is more than some people expect. Claire let out a soft laugh, then pulled back. I'm glad to see you, she said. Sit, June gestured. I want you to meet someone. Claire turned her attention to me. This is Stella Hayes, June said. She arrived a few days ago. Claire extended her hand immediately. Nice to meet you, Stella, she said. Her grip was firm, her eyes steady. Nice to meet you, I replied, trying to keep my voice even. There was a brief pause as Claire took her seat. I hope June hasn't been intimidating you, she said lightly. She's been honest, I said. Claire smiled faintly. That sounds like her. For a moment, the conversation stayed light. June asked about Claire's week. Claire asked about June's health. They spoke like people who had known each other a long time, comfortable, familiar, but I couldn't focus on any of it. My thoughts were racing, my heart pounding. This was my chance, and I didn't know how to begin. June must have sensed it. She has something she needs to talk to you about, she said, suddenly cutting through the conversation. Claire's attention shifted back to me immediately. What's going on? She asked, her tone calm but direct. There was no hesitation in her voice, no polite deflection, just openness. I took a breath. My son put me here, I said. Claire didn't react outwardly. All right, she said. Tell me more. So I did. I told her everything. I told her about Ryan, about his job in real estate, about the way he had started asking questions about my health, my memory, my paperwork. I told her about Brittany, about the careful suggestions, the subtle pressure to simplify my life. I told her about the folder on my kitchen table with my name on it. I told her about the sudden mold problem and the rushed decision to move me out of my home. I told her about arriving here and finding a file already prepared, one that described me as someone with memory concerns. I told her about the stranger who had answered my phone. I told her about Ryan avoiding my questions. I didn't leave anything out. And through all of it, Claire didn't interrupt. She didn't rush me. She just listened. But it wasn't passive listening. Her expression changed in small, precise ways. Her eyes narrowed slightly at certain details. Her posture shifted forward when I mentioned the paperwork. Her fingers tapped once against the table when I spoke about the phone call. She was processing, analyzing. When I finally finished, the silence that followed felt heavy. Okay, she said at last. Just one word. But it carried weight. Okay. I repeated, my voice tight. That's it. That's it. Claire held my gaze. Stella, she said carefully, I'm going to ask you some very specific questions. I need you to answer as clearly as you can. I nodded. Do you have access to your financial accounts right now? She asked. I believe so, I said. I haven't tried since I got here. Has your son ever asked you to sign documents related to your property recently? No, I said. Not directly, but he's had access to your paperwork. Yes. Does he have a key to your house? Yes. Claire nodded slowly. Has anyone formally evaluated your cognitive ability since you've been here? I've requested one, I said. It hasn't happened yet. Good, she said. That's important. She leaned back slightly, her expression thoughtful. Stella, she said what you're describing doesn't sound like a son trying to help his mother. My breath caught. It sounds like someone creating a controlled situation, she continued. One where you're not physically present and where your decision-making ability can be questioned. The words landed hard. Why I asked, though part of me already knew. Claire didn't soften it. To buy time, she said. The room seemed to go still, to do what I pressed. She met my eyes directly, to prepare something that would be much harder to do if you were at home and fully involved, she said. My hands trembled slightly on the table. My house, I whispered. Claire didn't confirm it immediately. Instead, she asked one more question. Your son works in real estate, she said. Correct. Yes. She nodded once. Then she said it. I think you need to consider the possibility that your absence is not incidental, she said. It's strategic. Strategic. The word echoed in my mind. Carefully planned, deliberately timed, everything lining up in a way that wasn't random. But he can't sell my house without me, I said, clinging to the one thing that still felt solid. Claire's expression didn't change. Not easily, she said, but there are ways people try to work around that. My heart began to race again. How, I asked. If there's documentation suggesting you're not fully capable of making decisions, she said it opens the door to certain legal maneuvers. Temporary control, accelerated processes, pressure. I shook my head. He wouldn't do that, I said automatically. Claire didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. I've seen situations where people do things they never thought they would, she said, especially when money is involved. Especially when they believe they're justified. Justified. That word hurt more than the rest, because it meant Ryan might not even see himself as doing something wrong. He said it was for my safety, I said weakly. Claire's gaze softened slightly. People often frame control as care, she said. It makes it easier to accept. I looked down at my hands. Everything felt different now, clearer, more dangerous. So what do I do? I asked quietly. Claire didn't hesitate this time. First, she said we confirm what's actually happening with your property. How I'll make some calls, she said. Discreetly. And then we make sure you're not trapped in here without a voice, she said. I looked up at her. No. For the first time since I got here, I said slowly, I feel like someone is actually listening to me. Claire gave a small, steady nod. I am, she said. June leaned back in her chair, watching the exchange with quiet satisfaction. I told you, she said softly. I exhaled, my chest tight, but lighter than it had been in days, because now the fear had a shape. The confusion had direction, and for the first time, I wasn't facing it alone. Claire didn't leave right away after that conversation. Instead, she asked if we could sit somewhere quieter. "There are a few calls I need to make," she said, glancing around the dining room, "and I'd rather not do that in the middle of all this." I understood immediately. This wasn't something to be discussed casually over breakfast trays and background chatter. June pointed us toward a smaller sitting room down the hall, one of those spaces meant for family visits. It had a couch, 2 armchairs, and a window that overlooked the parking lot. The door closed with a soft click behind us, and for the first time since Claire arrived, it felt like we were in a space that belonged to us. Claire set her bag down on the table and pulled out her phone. "Before I start," she said, turning to me, "I need to confirm a few details." I nodded. "Your full legal name is Stella Margaret Hayes." "Yes." "And the property address, I gave it to her each number and street name feeling heavier than it should have." She typed it in her fingers, moving quickly across the screen. "Do you know if your home is solely in your name?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "After my husband passed, everything transferred to me. We made sure of that." "Good," she murmured. "Good." That word gave me a small, fragile sense of relief. She stepped a few feet away, already dialing. "I'm going to make a couple of inquiries," she said. "Stay right here." I watched her as she spoke quietly into the phone, her tone shifting into something sharper, more professional. It was subtle, but unmistakable. This was someone who knew how to navigate systems, someone who knew what questions to ask and how to get answers. I sat on the edge of the armchair, my hands clasped tightly together, my mind racing ahead of what she might find. What if I was wrong? What if this was all just a misunderstanding, something that would unravel the moment Claire asked the right question? But then I remembered the folder, the phone call, Ryan's silence. No, this wasn't nothing. After a few minutes, Claire ended the call and immediately made another. This one lasted longer. Her expression grew more focused, her brows drawing together slightly as she listened. "Yes," she said at one point. "That's the address." A pause. "I see." Another pause. "Thank you. That's very helpful." When she finally ended the second call, she didn't speak right away. She stood there for a moment, the phone still in her hand, her eyes distant. My heart started pounding. "What is it?" I asked, my voice tight. She turned to me slowly. "There's activity," she said. The words hit me like a physical force. "What kind of activity?" I asked. She stepped closer, lowering her voice slightly. "Your property hasn't been sold," she said. "Not yet." A small wave of relief washed over me, but it didn't last. However, she continued, "It's been prepared for listing." Prepared. My chest tightened again. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means someone has been gathering information, possibly arranging inspections and getting things ready to put it on the market," she explained. My mind flashed back to the folder, the printed pages, the market comparisons. "Ryan," I whispered. Claire didn't confirm it outright, but she didn't need to. "There's also something else," she said carefully. I braced myself. "There's a preliminary inquiry tied to your address through a brokerage connected to your son's firm," she said. That was it. The final piece. The thing I had been afraid to say out loud. He wasn't just thinking about it. He was already moving. My vision blurred slightly as the reality settled in. "He's going to sell it," I said, my voice shaking. Claire watched me closely. "He's trying to," she said. "But that doesn't mean he can." I shook my head, overwhelmed. "He already told them I'm not capable," I said. "He told this place that I have memory problems. What if he's telling other people the same thing?" Claire's expression hardened slightly. That's exactly why this situation is dangerous, she said, because he's building a narrative. A narrative. A version of me. One where I was confused, forgetful, dependent, easy to override. I pressed my hands against my knees, trying to steady myself. I trusted him, I said quietly. Claire didn't respond to that, because there wasn't anything to say. After a moment, she shifted her focus. Stella, listen to me, she said firmly. He hasn't completed anything yet. That matters. I looked up. We still have time, I asked. Yes, she said, but not much. The words sent a jolt through me. What do we do? I asked. Claire didn't hesitate. We build your position, she said. Immediately. How? First, your cognitive evaluation, she said. That needs to happen as soon as possible. Once you're officially recognized as fully capable, it limits what he can claim. I've already requested one, I said. Good, she replied. I'll follow up on that if necessary. She paced slightly, thinking. Second, we need to secure your financial and legal standing, she continued. Do you have access to your bank accounts online? Yes, I said. I usually manage everything myself. Good. When you get the chance, we'll review that together. Make sure nothing unusual is happening. I nodded, trying to keep up. Third, she said, stopping in front of me, we need to confirm exactly what he's done inside the house. My stomach dropped. I don't want to imagine it, I said. You don't have to imagine, she replied. We'll find out. I took a shaky breath. What if he's already changed things, I asked. What if he's already moved in or started packing? Claire's eyes didn't waver. Then we address it, she said simply. Her confidence steadied me more than anything else had, because she wasn't reacting emotionally. She was responding strategically. What about the nursing home, I asked. They won't let me leave yet. That's temporary, she said. Once your evaluation is done, we'll have grounds to push back. And until then, she looked at me carefully. Until then, she said, we make sure he doesn't finish what he started. The room felt smaller somehow, more urgent, more real. I leaned back in the chair, my mind racing through everything she had said. He needed me out of the house, I said slowly. Not just because it was easier. Claire nodded. He needed you absent, she said, and possibly discredited. The word stung. Discredited. As if my voice no longer mattered, as if my reality could be rewritten. I closed my eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Why a week, I asked. Claire considered that. Because it's long enough to make progress, she said, but short enough that it doesn't immediately raise alarms. That made sense. Too much sense. I thought about the way Ryan had said it. Just a week. As if it were nothing. As if it were harmless. But it wasn't harmless. It was calculated. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady but my mind clearer than it had been in days. He thinks I'm not going to stop him, I said. Claire tilted her head slightly. Does he? She asked. I met her eyes. He thinks I'm exactly where he needs me to be, I said. Claire's expression shifted just slightly, but enough for me to see it. Approval. Then he's made a mistake, she said. A quiet strength settled in my chest. Because for the first time since this began, I knew what was happening. I knew why it was happening. And I knew that if I didn't act now, I might lose more than just my house. I might lose the right to decide anything at all. Claire picked up her bag, her movements precise. I'll be back later today, she said. I need to follow up on a few things. I nodded. Thank you. I said. She paused at the door, looking back at me. This isn't over, she said. I straightened slightly. No, I replied. It's not. As she left the room, I turned toward the window, staring out at the parking lot once more. But this time, it didn't feel like a barrier. It felt like a line. And somewhere beyond it, my life was being rearranged without me. Not anymore. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was afraid, but because my mind refused to slow down. For days I had been reacting, confused, hurt, trying to make sense of something that didn't want to be understood, but now everything had shape. Ryan wasn't just being overprotective. He wasn't just making poor decisions. He was moving pieces, and I had been one of them. I sat up in bed, the room dim except for the soft glow of the hallway light slipping in under the door. My hands rested on the blanket, steady for the first time since I arrived. Claire's words echoed in my mind. We build your position. Not wait. Not hope. Build. That meant I couldn't afford to hesitate anymore. By the time morning came, I was already dressed and waiting. I found Tasha at the nurse's station reviewing charts. I need to know when my evaluation is scheduled, I said. She looked up, surprised by the urgency in my voice. They're working on arranging it, she said. It should be soon. Today I pressed. She hesitated. I can check, she said. Please do, I replied. It's important. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. I'll make a call. While she stepped away, I stood there trying to keep my thoughts organized. Time mattered now. Every hour I spent inside this building was an hour Ryan could use to push things further outside of it. Tasha returned a few minutes later. They can do a preliminary evaluation this afternoon, she said. Full report might take longer, but they can start today. Relief moved through me, sharp and immediate. That's fine, I said. I'll be ready. She gave me a small, reassuring smile. You will be, she said. As I turned to leave, she added quietly, You're doing the right thing. Those words stayed with me, because for the first time, someone inside this place wasn't just observing me. They were supporting me. I spent the rest of the morning preparing, not in any obvious way, but mentally. I went over dates, conversations, names, details. I reminded myself of things only someone fully aware would remember, specifics about my accounts, my home, my routines. Not because I needed to prove anything to myself, but because I knew I might need to prove it to someone else. Claire arrived just before noon. She found me in the small sitting room, the same one we had used the day before. You look different, she said as she stepped inside. I feel different, I replied. She nodded as if that was exactly what she expected. I made a few more calls, she said, setting her bag down. Nothing has been finalized yet, but the activity around your property is increasing. My stomach tightened, increasing how I asked. There's been movement, she said. Preliminary discussions, inquiries. Enough to suggest your son isn't waiting. Of course he wasn't. He thinks I have a week, I said. Claire met my eyes. Then we make sure he doesn't get it, she replied. I exhaled slowly. My evaluation is this afternoon, I told her. Good, she said. That's step one. She sat across from me, leaning forward slightly. After that, we move quickly, she continued. Once you're officially recognized as competent, it changes the entire dynamic. How, I asked. It weakens any claim that you need oversight, she explained. And it gives us leverage to challenge any actions taken without your direct consent. I nodded, absorbing every word. There's something else, she added. I tensed slightly. What I asked. I checked public records related to your son's recent activity, she said. There's no confirmed sale tied to your property yet, but there are signs of financial pressure. A cold feeling settled in my chest. What kind of pressure, I asked. Claire chose her words carefully. Debt, she said. Or at least something close to it. Enough to create urgency. I closed my eyes briefly. So that was it. Not just ambition. Not just convenience. Desperation. He needs the house, I said quietly. He believes he does. Claire corrected. There was a difference. A small one, but an important one. Because need didn't justify what he was doing. It just explained it. I don't understand how he got here, I said more to myself than to her. He was never careless with money. Not like this. People change under pressure, Claire said, especially when they start rationalizing their choices. I thought about Ryan's voice on the phone. It's the safest option. Don't make this a bigger deal than it needs to be. He had already convinced himself. That was the dangerous part. Then we don't let him go any further, I said. Claire's expression sharpened slightly. Exactly, she said. The evaluation came sooner than I expected. A man in his 50s introduced himself as Dr. Keller. He was calm, professional, and direct. I'm here to assess your cognitive function, he explained. It's a standard process. I understand, I said. And I did. But understanding didn't make it any easier. Because this wasn't just a test. It was a gate. And on the other side of it was my voice, my authority, my life. He asked me questions, dates, names, sequences. He asked me to recall information, to explain decisions, to describe situations. At one point he asked, "Why do you believe you're here?" I didn't hesitate. Because my son arranged it, I said. And because he provided information that suggested I needed supervision. Dr. Keller watched me carefully. And do you believe that information is accurate? He asked. No, I said firmly. I believe it was exaggerated. Why would he do that? I held his gaze. Because it gives him more control, I said. There was a pause. Then he moved on. The evaluation lasted nearly an hour. When it was over, I felt drained but clear. I hadn't stumbled. I hadn't faltered. I had answered everything exactly as it was. Claire was waiting for me outside. Well, she asked. I said what I needed to say, I replied. She studied my face, then nodded. That's enough, she said. We sat down together, the tension between us quieter now, but not gone. What happens next? I asked. We wait for the initial findings, she said. But based on what I've seen... She paused. You're going to be fine. A small, steady relief settled in my chest. Not overwhelming, not dramatic, but real. And then I asked? Claire leaned forward slightly. Then we move, she said. The word landed with purpose. Move. Not wait. Not react. Act. I looked down at my hands. For days they had trembled. Now they were still. Because the fear that had filled me before, the confusion, the doubt, it had been replaced by something stronger, something sharper. Resolve. I'm not going to lose my home, I said quietly. Claire didn't smile. She didn't soften it. She just nodded. No, she said. You're not. And for the first time since this began, I believed it. The hours after my evaluation felt slower than anything I had experienced in that place. Not because there was nothing to do, but because everything suddenly mattered. Every minute felt like it was being counted somewhere else outside those walls, inside my house, in conversations I wasn't part of. I sat by the window in the small sitting room watching cars come and go in the parking lot, wondering how many of those people still had control over their own lives. It was a strange thought. A few days ago, I would have said control was something you either had or didn't. Now I understood how easily it could be taken. Quietly. Systematically. Under the cover of concern. Claire returned mid-afternoon earlier than I expected. There was a subtle urgency in the way she walked, the way she closed the door behind her. Anything I asked immediately. Not from the evaluation yet, she said, but that's not what I came to tell you. My chest tightened. What is it I asked? She set her bag down and faced me directly. I confirmed that your house has been shown to at least 2 potential buyers, she said. The words landed harder than I expected. Shown, I repeated. Yes, she said. Walkthroughs. Informal, but real. I stared at her. He's bringing people into my home. I said slowly. Yes. Without telling me. Yes, I felt something inside me shift, something deep and final. Not shock. Not confusion. Something colder. Clearer. He's already acting like it's not mine anymore, I said. Claire didn't argue. From his perspective, she said carefully, he may believe he's preparing for something inevitable. I'm not inevitable, I said sharply. I'm here. I'm thinking. I'm deciding. I know, she said calmly. But he's operating as if you won't be. That silence settled between us again. Heavy, unavoidable. What about Brittany, I asked. Is she involved? Claire hesitated for a moment. Yes, she said. She's been present during at least one of the walkthroughs. Of course she had. I let out a slow breath. They're doing this together, I said. Yes. There was no softness in that answer. No room for denial. I turned back toward the window, my reflection faintly visible in the glass. For a moment, I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. Not because she was weak, but because she was no longer willing to pretend. I spent my whole life making sure Ryan had everything he needed, I said quietly. And now he's rearranging mine like I'm already gone. Claire stepped closer, her voice steady. He's made assumptions, she said. That's not the same as reality. I nodded slowly, but the pain was still there. Sharp. Unavoidable. Do you have any idea how hard it is, I said, to accept that your own child sees you as an obstacle? Claire didn't try to answer that. She didn't need to. Because some things didn't have answers. They just had consequences. We sat in silence for a moment before she spoke again. There's another development, she said. I looked up. What I asked. She held my gaze. They've started preparing the house physically, she said, decluttering, packing some items, rearranging spaces. The words hit deeper than anything else. Packing. My things. My laimahino. What kind of items, I asked, my voice barely steady. Personal belongings, she said. Some furniture. Decorative pieces. My throat tightened. They're erasing me, I whispered. Claire's expression softened slightly, but her tone remained firm. They're trying to... she corrected. I closed my eyes for a moment. Images flooded my mind. The framed photographs on the hallway wall, Harold's books on the shelf, the small ceramic bowl I kept by the door for my keys. Each one of those things had meaning, history, and now they were being handled, moved, possibly discarded, without me. I need to go home, I said suddenly. Claire didn't hesitate. I know, she said, and we're getting there. When I asked more sharply than I intended, as soon as we have the evaluation results, she replied. That's the leverage we need, and if he moves faster than that, I pressed. Claire met my urgency with calm. Then we adjust, she said. But we don't rush without protection. That would put you at risk. At risk of what I asked. Of being dismissed again, she said. Of walking in without the authority to back yourself up. I knew she was right. But that didn't make waiting easier. I can't just sit here while they dismantle my life, I said. You're not sitting, she said. You're preparing. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. Because she was right. Every step we had taken mattered. The evaluation, the information, the strategy. This wasn't helplessness anymore. It was timing. Still, the waiting felt unbearable. I keep thinking about the last time I was in that house, I said quietly. I didn't even know I was leaving it behind. Claire didn't speak. I thought I was coming back to everything exactly as I left it. I continued. I didn't say goodbye to anything. The weight of that realization pressed down on me. Because goodbye, real goodbye, required awareness. Choice. And I hadn't been given either. Claire stepped closer. You're going back, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was certain. And when you do, she added, you're not going back as someone who needs permission. I looked at her. And Ryan, I asked. What about him? She replied. What happens when I walk back into that house, I said. What happens when he sees me? Claire's expression didn't change. That depends on what he's willing to admit, she said. And if he doesn't, I asked. Then he faces the consequences of what he's done, she said. Simple, direct, unavoidable. I nodded slowly, because for the first time I wasn't thinking about how to avoid conflict. I was thinking about how to face it. That evening, Tasha found me in my room. I spoke to Dr. Keller, she said. He's still finalizing everything, but what I asked. She smiled slightly. You did very well, she said. A quiet wave of relief moved through me. Thank you, I said. She hesitated, then added, he didn't see any signs of cognitive impairment. The words settled into me slowly. No signs. Clear. Undeniable. It wasn't the official report yet, but it was enough. Enough to confirm what I already knew. Enough to start shifting the balance. Does that mean I can leave? I asked. Not immediately, she said. But it helps. A lot. I nodded, because even that was something. More than I had before. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands resting on my lap. For days, I had felt like I was being pushed out of my own life, like decisions were being made around me, over me, without me. But now, that current was shifting, slowly, but undeniably. Ryan had used this week to move forward, to set things in motion, to create a version of reality where I wasn't fully present. But he had made one mistake. He had assumed I wouldn't push back, that I would accept what was happening, that I would stay quiet. He was wrong. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out into the fading light. Somewhere beyond that parking lot, my home was being rearranged, prepared, presented, but not yet taken. Not yet lost. I placed my hand lightly against the glass, and for the first time since this began, I didn't feel like I was on the outside looking in. I felt like I was about to walk back in on my own terms. The call came early the next morning. I was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with my shoes on, as if my body had decided before my mind did that something was about to change. There was a knock on the door, and then Tasha stepped inside holding a folder. Her expression gave it away before she said a single word. It's in, she said. My heart pounded. The evaluation, I asked. She nodded. You've been cleared, she said. Fully competent. No cognitive impairment. For a moment I couldn't speak. The words settled into me slowly, like something I had always known, but still needed to hear out loud. "You're sure?" I asked quietly. Tasha smiled. "I've never been more sure about anything in this building," she said. Relief came first, then something else. Strength. "Claire," I said, standing up. "I need to call Claire." "She's already on her way," Tasha said. Of course she was. Claire didn't waste time. Neither would I. By the time Claire arrived, I was ready. Not just emotionally, decisively. "You have it?" she asked as she stepped into the room. I held up the folder. "Clear," I said. She took it, scanning the pages quickly. "This is exactly what we need," she said. "It confirms everything." I watched her carefully. "What does that mean now?" I asked. "It means," she said, closing the folder, "you're not staying here another minute longer than necessary." My chest tightened. "Then let's go," I said. Claire didn't hesitate. "I've already spoken to administration," she said. "They're reviewing the report, but there's no legal basis to hold you here against your will now." Good, because I wasn't going to ask twice. The discharge process still took longer than I wanted. Forms, signatures, careful, polite conversations that suddenly felt very different now that I had documentation behind me. No one questioned me anymore. No one spoke over me. No one redirected my concerns. Because now I had proof. Not just my voice, not just my insistence, but something official, something undeniable. By the time we stepped outside, the air felt different, lighter, sharper, real. I hadn't realized how heavy that place had become until I was no longer inside it. Claire walked beside me as we crossed the parking lot. "Are you ready?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, because ready wasn't the right word. No one is ever ready to confront something like this. But I was willing. "Yes," I said finally. We drove in silence. Not the tense silence from before, but a focused one. Every turn brought us closer to my house, to the place that was supposed to be mine. As we turned onto my street, my pulse began to rise. Everything looked the same. The trees, the sidewalks, the quiet familiarity of a neighborhood that had once felt safe. But as we pulled into the driveway, I knew something was wrong. The front door, the lock had been changed. I could see it immediately. A different finish, a different shape. My chest tightened. "They changed it," I said. Claire's jaw set slightly. "I see that," she said. I stepped out of the car slowly, my eyes fixed on the house. It looked like my home. But it didn't feel like it. Not anymore. Claire walked up beside me. "Let me handle the first part," she said quietly. I nodded, because I wasn't sure what I would do if I tried to open that door myself and couldn't. Claire knocked firmly. Once. Twice. There was movement inside. Footsteps. And then the door opened. Ryan stood there. For a moment, neither of us spoke. His expression shifted rapidly. Shock, confusion, something close to panic. "Mom," he said. My name. But it didn't sound the same. It sounded like he wasn't expecting me to be standing there. "You're back," he added, his voice uneven. "I am," I said. He glanced at Claire, then back at me. "What's going on?" he asked. Claire stepped forward slightly. "Stella has been cleared of any cognitive concerns," she said calmly. "She is fully capable of making her own decisions." Ryan's face tightened. "That's not," he started. Claire didn't let him finish. "We have the documentation," she said, holding up the folder. Silence. Ryan's eyes flicked to it, then back to me. "You didn't have to come back so soon," he said. The words landed wrong, so wrong that for a moment I couldn't process them. "I didn't have to," I repeated. He shifted slightly, his posture defensive now. "I mean, it would have been easier if you had just stayed the week," he said. "Easier." The word hit me like a blow. For who, I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped back slightly as if trying to create space. "You should come inside," he said quickly. "We can talk." But I didn't move. Not yet. Because from where I stood, I could see it. Through the open doorway. The changes. Boxes. Furniture moved. Things missing. Things out of place. My house. But not as I had left it. "What have you done?" I asked quietly. Ryan followed my gaze, then looked back at me. "Just organizing things," he said. "Preparing." Preparing what I interrupted. He hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything. Claire stepped forward again. "We're aware that the property has been shown to potential buyers," she said. Ryan's expression hardened. "That's not finalized," he said quickly. "But it's been initiated," she replied. He didn't deny it. I felt something inside me break. Not loudly, not dramatically, just completely. "You are going to sell my house," I said. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, his composure slipping. "It's not like that," he said. "It's exactly like that," I replied. He shook his head. "You don't understand," he said. This was the best option. For who, I asked again. "For all of us," he said, his voice rising slightly. "You can't stay here alone forever. It's too much for you." "I've been managing just fine," I said. "You think you have?" He shot back. "But things change, Mom. You don't see it, but I do." There it was. The narrative. The one he had built. The one he needed to believe. "I see very clearly right now," I said. Silence fell between us. Heavy. Unavoidable. Claire stepped aside slightly, giving me space. This was my moment, not hers. Mine? I took a step forward. Into my house. And everything inside me tightened at once. Because it wasn't just different. It was wrong. The pictures on the wall gone. The table in the corner moved. Boxes stacked where my belongings had been. Pieces of my life handled like inventory. I turned slowly, taking it all in. "You started packing my things," I said. Ryan didn't answer. "You let strangers walk through my home," I continued. Still nothing. "You told them I wasn't coming back," I said. That made him react. "I never said that he insisted." "You didn't have to," I said, "because everything around me said it for him." Claire stepped in then. "We need to be clear about something," she said calmly. "Stella is the sole legal owner of this property. Any actions taken without her consent." "I know what I'm doing," Ryan snapped. "Do you?" The thought crossed my mind. But I didn't say it. Instead, I looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time, I didn't see my son. I saw someone who had made a choice, and now had to face it. "You thought I wouldn't come back," I said. Ryan's silence confirmed it. And that, more than anything, was what hurt the most. For a moment, no one moved. The silence in the living room pressed in on all of us, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. It wasn't just the quiet of a conversation paused. It was the kind of silence that comes when something has been exposed and no one knows how to put it back. Ryan stood near the doorway, his shoulders tense, his eyes flicking between me and Claire, as if he were trying to calculate what to say next. Brittany appeared from the hallway, then drawn by the voices. She stopped short when she saw me standing there. "Stella," she said, her tone shifting instantly into something soft and controlled. You're back. Back. As if I had gone somewhere by choice. As if I had left. I said, her gaze moved quickly to Claire, assessing, then back to me. We didn't expect you until later, she said carefully. I let that hang in the air. You didn't expect me at all, I replied. A flicker of irritation crossed her face before it smoothed over again. That's not fair, she said. We were just trying to help. Claire stepped forward, her presence calm but unyielding. Then you won't mind explaining why the property has already been shown to potential buyers, she said. Brittany's expression tightened. That's being taken out of context, she said quickly. Then provide the context, Claire replied. Ryan exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. Can we not do this like this, he said. Mom just got back. We should sit down and talk like a family. Family. The word felt hollow. We are talking, I said. Right now. He looked at me, frustration rising. You're making this into something it's not, he said. Then tell me what it is I said. His jaw tightened. It's a plan, he said finally. A necessary one. For what I asked. For the future, he replied. For your safety. For stability. I took a slow step forward, the distance between us shrinking. My safety, I repeated. Is that why you changed the locks? Ryan hesitated. It was temporary, he said. Is that why my things are in boxes? I continued. We were organizing. Is that why strangers have been walking through my home? I pressed. His voice rose. They're not strangers. They're potential buyers. The word slipped out before he could stop it. Buyers. There it was. The truth spoken without disguise. The room went still again. Brittany closed her eyes briefly as if bracing for impact. Ryan's expression shifted, realizing what he had just said. You were going to sell my house, I said. This time it wasn't a question. It was a fact. Ryan didn't deny it. Instead, he straightened slightly, his posture changing, not defensive anymore, but resolute. Yes, he said. The word hit harder than anything else he could have said. Yes, not apology, not hesitation, just confirmation. You had no right, I said, my voice steady but cold. I had every reason, he shot back. Claire stepped in, her tone firm. That's not how property law works, she said. Stella is the sole owner. You cannot. I know that, Ryan snapped. I'm not stupid. Then explain your plan, Claire said calmly. Ryan turned back to me. I was trying to make this easier, he said. For who, I asked again. For you, he insisted. You can't stay here alone forever. This house is too much. It's not safe. I have lived here for years without you deciding what's safe for me, I said. That's the problem, he replied. You don't see it. The words stung, but not because I believed them, because I recognized them. They were the same words he had been feeding everyone else, the same narrative, the same justification. You told them I have memory problems, I said. Ryan didn't respond. You told them I needed supervision, I continued. Still nothing. You told them I couldn't manage my own life, I said. That's not what I said, he muttered. Then what did you say I demanded? His silence answered for him. Brittany stepped forward, then her voice softer, more controlled. We were worried about you, she said. You've had moments. No, I haven't, I said, cutting her off. Her expression tightened. You don't remember everything she said carefully. I remember enough, I replied. Claire raised the folder slightly. She has been evaluated, she said. Independently. No cognitive impairment. Ryan's eyes flicked to it again. That doesn't change anything, he said. It changes everything, Claire corrected. Ryan shook his head. You don't understand the situation, he said. Then explain it, Claire said. He hesitated. And for a moment I thought he might keep lying, that he might continue to build that careful version of reality where everything he had done was reasonable. But then something shifted. Maybe it was the evidence. Maybe it was the fact that I was standing in front of him not confused, not absent, not silent. Or maybe he was just too tired to keep pretending. It's not just about the house, he said finally. I felt my chest tighten. Then what is it about? I asked. He exhaled slowly, his composure cracking. It's about everything he said. The house is just the only thing that can fix it. Fix what I pressed. His eyes moved briefly to Brittany, then back to me. The debt, he said. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Unavoidable. What debt, I asked. Brittany looked down. Ryan rubbed his face again as if trying to gather himself. I made some bad investments, he said. Things didn't go the way I expected. How bad, I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Bad enough that we can't cover it without selling something significant, he said. Something significant. My house. You were going to sell my home to cover your mistakes, I said. Ryan flinched slightly at the way I phrased it. It's not like that, he said quickly. It's not just my mistakes. It's exactly like that, I interrupted. Brittany stepped in again. We didn't have a choice, she said. You had choices, I replied. You just didn't choose them. Her composure slipped for a moment. We were running out of time, she said. We needed a solution. So you created one, I said, by removing me from the equation. Ryan's voice rose again. You would have been fine, he said. It was just a week. Just a week. That phrase again. As if a week was nothing. As if a week wasn't enough to dismantle a life. As long as I was out of the house, I said slowly, you could do whatever you needed to do. That's not fair, he said. No, I replied. It's not. The room fell quiet again, but this time it was different. Not tense, not uncertain, final. Because the truth was no longer hidden. It was out, exposed, unavoidable. Claire spoke then, her voice calm but firm. Regardless of your circumstances, Ryan, what you attempted is not legally or ethically defensible, she said. Stella retains full control over her property and her decisions. Ryan looked at her, frustration flashing in his eyes. You think I don't know that, he said. You think I wanted it to come to this. Then why did it? She asked. He didn't answer. Because the answer was already there, in every choice he had made, in every step he had taken, in every line he had crossed. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man he had become, and for the first time I understood something I hadn't wanted to accept. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. This was a decision. And now it was mine to respond to. You didn't just try to sell my house, I said quietly. Ryan's eyes met mine. You tried to take my life away from me, I continued. He didn't speak, because there was nothing left to say. For a long moment after I said those words, no one moved. Not Ryan, not Brittany, not even Claire. It was as if everything had finally settled into place. every lie, every omission, every careful justification, and now we were all standing in the truth of it with nowhere left to hide. Ryan looked at me, really looked this time. Not with the controlled confidence he usually wore, not with the impatient frustration from a few minutes ago, but with something else, something raw. "I didn't mean it like that," he said quietly. I held his gaze. "But that's what you did," I replied. He swallowed, his eyes shifting slightly as if trying to find another version of the story that would sound better. There was no other way, he said. Those words again. No other way. I felt a strange calm settle over me. Because I had heard that phrase before many times in many forms. People say it when they've already made a choice they don't want to take responsibility for. "There is always another way," I said. "You just didn't choose it." Brittany stepped closer, her voice tighter now, less controlled than before. "We were drowning," she said. "You don't understand how bad it got." I turned to her. "Then you should have told me," I said. Her eyes flashed. "And say what she asked. That we needed money. That we messed up. That we couldn't fix it ourselves." "Yes," I said. She shook her head. "You would have said no," she replied. I didn't hesitate. "You're right," I said. That seemed to catch her off guard. Ryan frowned slightly. "Then how does that help anything?" he asked. "It helps because it would have been honest," I said. "And it would have been my decision." The word hung between us. Decision. Not assumption. Not manipulation. Choice. Ryan looked away first. "You wouldn't have understood," he muttered. "I would have understood that my son was in trouble," I said, "and I would have decided what I was willing to do about it." He ran a hand through his hair again, pacing slightly now. "It wasn't that simple," he said. "It was exactly that simple," I replied. "You just made it complicated." Claire remained silent, but I could feel her attention on both of us, watching, assessing, making sure this didn't slip into something uncontrolled. Ryan stopped pacing. "There wasn't time," he said finally. "For what I asked. For talking," he snapped. "For debating. For waiting. Things were moving fast." "Then you should have slowed them down," I said. "I couldn't," he said. "That's the point." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. For the first time, I saw it clearly. Not just desperation, fear. Real fear. And underneath that, shame. "I made mistakes," he said, quieter now. "Big ones." I didn't interrupt. "I thought I could fix them," he continued. "I thought I could turn things around before anyone noticed, before it affected anyone else. But it did," I said. He nodded, his jaw tight. "Yes," he admitted. Brittany crossed her arms, her posture defensive again. "We didn't plan for it to go this far," she said. "We just needed time." And I was the time, I said. Neither of them denied it, because they couldn't. I looked around the room slowly, at the boxes, at the empty spaces where things used to be, at the small, quiet evidence of how close they had come to erasing me from this place. "You didn't just take time," I said. "You took control." Ryan's eyes flicked back to me. "I was trying to manage a situation," he said. "You were trying to manage me," I replied. He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. Because again, there was nothing he could say that would change what had already happened. Claire stepped forward, then her voice calm but firm. "Ryan, regardless of your intentions, your actions have serious implications," she said. "You attempted to move forward with the sale of a property you do not own based on information that has now been proven inaccurate." I didn't finalize anything, he said quickly. "That doesn't negate the attempt," she replied. He exhaled sharply, frustration rising again. "So what now?" he asked. "You're going to take me to court. Is that what this is?" Claire didn't respond immediately, because that question, that wasn't really for her. It was for me. I felt it. The shift. The moment where everything could turn into something bigger, something legal, something final. I looked at Ryan, at the man standing in my living room surrounded by the consequences of his own decisions. And I asked myself one simple question. What do I want? Not what he deserved, not what Claire could pursue. What I wanted. "I'm not interested in destroying you," I said finally. Ryan blinked, caught off guard. What he asked. "I'm not going to take you to court," I said. Brittany let out a breath she had been holding. But I wasn't finished. "That doesn't mean this goes away," I continued. Ryan's shoulders tensed again. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means you don't get to walk away from this without consequences," I said. His jaw tightened. What kind of consequences, he asked. I took a slow step forward. "The kind where you don't get access to anything that belongs to me," I said. His eyes flickered. "You never had access," he said. "That's not true," I replied. "You had trust. That's more powerful than access." That landed. I could see it, because he knew I was right. "I trusted you," I said, "with my home, my information, my life." "I know," he said quietly. "And you used that," I continued. He didn't deny it. Claire spoke again, her tone measured. "Stella has every right to revise her legal and financial arrangements moving forward," she said. "That includes restricting any authority you may have previously had." Ryan looked at her, then back at me. "You're cutting me out?" he asked. The question wasn't angry. It was something else. Uncertain. I considered it carefully. "I'm drawing a line," I said. There was a difference. A very important one. "I'm not removing you from my life," I continued, "but I am removing your ability to control it." His expression shifted again. Not relief, not anger, something more complicated. "You think I wanted this?" he asked. I held his gaze. "I think you chose it," I said. Silence. Because again, that was the truth. And the truth didn't need to be repeated. It just needed to be acknowledged. Ryan looked down at the floor, his shoulders sagging slightly. For the first time since I walked in, he looked smaller, not physically, but in the way someone looks when they realize they've lost something they didn't think they could lose. "Mom," he said, his voice lower now. I didn't respond, because I wasn't ready for that conversation. Not yet. Not here. Not like this. "I need you to stop everything," I said instead. "The showings, the paperwork, all of it." He nodded slowly. "I will," he said. I watched him carefully. Immediately I added, "I said I will," he replied. Claire stepped forward slightly. "We'll be verifying that," she said. Ryan didn't argue. Because he couldn't. Because for the first time since this began, he didn't have the advantage anymore. I turned away from him, then walking slowly through the house, taking it in, room by room, piece by piece. This was still my home, but it had been changed, disturbed, shifted, and it would take time to put it back together. But I would, because now I wasn't just protecting a house. I was protecting something much bigger, my right to exist in my own life. That evening after the confrontation, the house felt unfamiliar in a different way than before. Not because of what had been moved, but because of what had been revealed. Claire stayed with me for a while, helping me go through the first layer of what needed to be addressed. Not emotionally, that would come later, but practically. Because right now, practicality was what would protect me. We start with the essentials, she said, setting her bag on the dining table, the same table where I had once found that folder with my name on it. The memory flickered through my mind, sharper now, clearer. This had started here, and now it would be handled here. I want to make sure your accounts are secure, Claire continued. Anything that could be accessed or influenced needs to be reviewed. I nodded. I can log into everything, I said. I've always managed it myself. Good, she replied. That makes this easier. Easier. It was a strange word considering everything that had happened, but I understood what she meant. Easier didn't mean simple. It meant possible. We sat down together, my laptop open in front of us. As I entered my passwords, steady, deliberate, I felt something shift again. Control. Not theoretical, not emotional. Real. Tangible. My accounts were intact. No unauthorized withdrawals. No sudden transfers. No obvious signs of financial interference. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. At least he didn't touch this, I said. Claire nodded. That suggests he was relying on the property, not liquid assets, she said. I closed the laptop slowly. He knew I would notice money, I said. But he thought I wouldn't notice the house until it was too late. Claire didn't respond to that. She didn't need to, because we both knew it was true. Next came the paperwork. I retrieved the documents I kept in the locked drawer in my study deeds insurance legal records. My hands hesitated slightly as I opened it. Not because I was unsure, but because I was remembering. All the years I had trusted Ryan to help with these things, all the moments I had believed that trust was safe. That was over now. Not the relationship, but the blind part of it. Claire reviewed the documents carefully. Everything is in your name, she confirmed. No co-signers, no shared ownership. That's good. It always was, I said quietly. We made sure of it. She glanced up at me. You and your husband, she asked. I nodded. Harold believed in planning ahead, I said. He didn't like leaving things uncertain. Claire's expression softened slightly. He did you a favor, she said. I looked down at the papers. Yes, he had. Even now. Especially now. There's one more thing, Claire said. I looked up. What I asked. We need to update your legal protections, she said. Immediately. I felt my chest tighten slightly. In what way, I asked. Power of attorney access permissions. Any authority your son might have had, formal or informal, she explained. We need to make it very clear that all decision-making rests with you. I nodded slowly. I don't think I ever gave him formal power, I said, but I did let him handle things. That's enough to create assumptions, she said. Assumptions. That word again. The quiet danger of things that weren't written down but were still treated as real. I want to change that, I said. Claire gave a small nod. We will. There was a pause. Then I asked the question that had been sitting quietly in the back of my mind. What happens to Ryan? I said. Claire didn't answer immediately. Legally, she asked. No, I said. Personally. She considered that. That depends on you, she said. I looked around the room, at the boxes still stacked near the wall, at the spaces where things had been moved, at the traces of what had almost been taken from me. I don't want to destroy him, I said. You've made that clear, she replied. But I can't go back to how things were, I continued. No, she said. You can't. I let that settle. Because it was the truth. Simple. Unavoidable. I need distance, I said. That's reasonable, Claire replied. I need boundaries, I added. That's necessary, she said. I nodded, because for the first time I wasn't thinking about what Ryan needed. I was thinking about what I needed, and that was new. Later that evening after Claire left, I walked through the house alone, slowly, deliberately, room by room. In the living room, I paused in front of the wall where our family photos had once hung. They were gone, packed, stored somewhere in those boxes. I didn't rush to find them, not yet, because this moment, this quiet, empty space, it mattered. It was a reminder of what had been done and what I had stopped. I moved into the kitchen next. The same kitchen where Ryan had stood asking questions, making suggestions, shaping a future I hadn't agreed to. I ran my hand lightly over the counter. Solid, familiar, still mine, but different now, because I was different. I walked into my bedroom last. The bed was still made, the curtains still drawn the way I liked them, but something had shifted. Not physically, emotionally. This room had always been a place of comfort, of memory. Now it was also a place of awareness. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my hands resting in my lap. And for the first time since all of this began, I allowed myself to feel everything. The hurt, the betrayal, the anger, the loss. Because even though I had stopped him, even though I had come back, something had still been broken. Trust doesn't shatter quietly. It leaves pieces, and those pieces don't fit back together the same way. There was a knock on the door, soft, careful. I didn't need to open it to know who it was. Mom Ryan's voice came through. I closed my eyes briefly, then stood up. I walked to the door, but I didn't open it right away, because this was another moment, another choice. Finally, I spoke. I'm not ready to talk, I said. There was silence on the other side. Then I understand. He replied quietly. I rested my hand against the door, not opening it, not yet. I need time, I said. I know, he said. Another pause. I'm sorry, he added. The words hung there, heavy, incomplete, but real. I didn't respond, not because I didn't hear him, but because apologies don't fix things overnight. They don't erase actions. They don't rebuild trust. They are a beginning. Nothing more. And I wasn't ready to begin. Not yet. I stepped back from the door and let the silence return, because for the first time that silence didn't feel like loss. It felt like space. Space to think. Space to heal. Space to decide what came next. And this time, the decision would be mine. The house was quiet again. Not the empty quiet I had felt when I first returned, when everything seemed displaced and unfamiliar, but a different kind of quiet. One that slowly, carefully began to feel like mine again. It took days before I started opening the boxes. At first, I simply walked past them. I cooked small meals, sat in my usual chair, and let myself exist in the space without forcing it to return to what it had been. There is a difference between reclaiming something and rushing to restore it. I chose to reclaim it. The first box I opened held photographs. Stacks of them, some framed, some loose, some I hadn't looked at in years. I sat on the living room floor and went through them one by one. Harold smiling in the backyard, sleeves rolled up dirt on his hands. Ryan, as a little boy missing a front tooth holding a science project he had insisted would win first place. Me much younger, standing between them laughing at something I couldn't even remember now. I traced the edges of one photo with my fingers. That life had been real. So had this one. And somewhere between the two, something had shifted in a way I could no longer ignore. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't feel it, but because the tears had already come earlier in a different form. Now what I felt was something steadier. Understanding. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But clarity. A week after I returned home, I met Claire at a small community center downtown. She had invited me to sit in on a discussion group she occasionally attended, something informal, she said, but meaningful. It was a group for older adults. Not a support group in the traditional sense, but a place where people shared experiences, talked about boundaries, about autonomy, about the quiet ways control can be taken from someone who isn't paying attention. I sat quietly at first listening. A man spoke about his daughter moving him into a smaller apartment without asking. A woman talked about her nephew managing her finances temporarily, then slowly taking over more than she had agreed to. Another person described being pressured into selling property under the guise of simplifying their life. Different stories, same pattern. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't alone. What had happened to me wasn't unique. It wasn't a strange, isolated betrayal. It was something that happened more often than people talked about. Claire watched me as I listened, her expression calm but knowing. After the meeting, she walked with me outside. "You didn't say much," she noted. "I didn't need to," I replied. She nodded. "Sometimes listening is enough," she said. I looked out at the street, the steady movement of people going about their day. "I thought I was the only one," I said quietly. "You're not," she said. "I wish I had known that sooner." She gave a small, understanding smile. Most people do. We stood there for a moment in silence. Then she asked, "How are things at home?" I considered the question. "Better," I said. Not fixed, but better. That was the truth. Ryan had stopped everything just like he said he would. No more showings, no more inquiries, no more movement on the house. He had kept his distance too. He called once, left a message, then waited. He didn't show up unannounced. He didn't push. He didn't try to explain things again. That more than anything told me he had finally understood something. That this wasn't something he could talk his way out of. That this required something else. Time. Change. Proof. I hadn't called him back. Not yet. Because I needed that time too. And I was no longer willing to rush my own process to make someone else comfortable. "I'm proud of you," Claire said suddenly. I turned to her surprised. "For what I asked." "For not rushing," she said. "For not collapsing back into what was easier." I thought about that. About how easy it would have been to accept an apology. To smooth things over. To pretend this had been a misunderstanding. But it hadn't been. And pretending wouldn't protect me. "I'm learning," I said. She nodded. "That's enough." That night back at home, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. The same table where everything had started. The same place where I had once stood looking at a folder I didn't understand. Now I understood everything. The patterns, the signs, the small moments that add up to something bigger. I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out a piece of paper. A letter. Not long. Not complicated, but necessary. I wrote Ryan's name at the top. And then I paused. Because this wasn't just about what I wanted to say. It was about what needed to be said. Finally, I began. I told him the truth. That I loved him. That I always would. That nothing he had done could erase that. But also that what he had done had changed something fundamental between us, that trust once broken doesn't return on its own, that it has to be rebuilt, carefully, deliberately, over time. I told him I needed distance, not as punishment, but as protection for myself, for my sense of safety, for my ability to stand in my own life without fear of being moved out of it. And I told him one more thing, that if he wanted a relationship with me in the future, it would have to be based on honesty, not control, not convenience, not assumption. Honesty. I folded the letter slowly, placed it in an envelope, and set it on the table. I didn't rush to send it, because this wasn't about urgency, it was about intention. The next morning, I walked out onto the front porch. The air was cool, the sunlight soft. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing, present, here, in my home. Not because someone allowed me to be, not because someone arranged it, but because it was mine, and I had chosen to stay. Claire had changed everything, not by rescuing me, not by taking control, but by showing me the truth at the exact moment I needed to see it. She had given me something I didn't realize I had been losing, my voice. And once I found it again, everything else followed. I looked out at the quiet street, the familiar rhythm of a life I had nearly been removed from, and I understood something clearly. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the moment I took it back. After everything that happened, I spent a long time thinking about what this experience really meant, not just for me, but for anyone who might find themselves in a similar situation. We often believe that love and trust go hand in hand, that the people closest to us will always act in our best interest, and most of the time that's true. But sometimes love gets tangled with fear, with pressure, with desperation. And in those moments, people can make choices that cross lines they never thought they would cross. What I learned is this: you can love someone deeply and still need boundaries. You can forgive someone eventually and still protect yourself today. And most importantly, your voice, your ability to decide your own life should never be handed over without thought, no matter who is asking. If something feels wrong, even if you can't explain it right away, listen to that feeling. Ask questions. Pay attention. Because the smallest details are often the first signs that something bigger is happening beneath the surface. And if you ever find yourself in a position where your voice is being questioned, don't give up on it. Speak. Ask for help. Find someone who will listen. Because the moment you reclaim your voice is the moment everything can change. If this story touched you in any way, I'd truly love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced something similar? Or do you think Stella made the right choices? Share your perspective in the comments. And if you're watching this, let me know where you are in the world and what time it is for you right now. I always find it amazing how stories like this connect people across different places and moments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy emotional, meaningful family stories like this one. Your support means more than you know.